Hi, Assalamualaikum and very good day, class. How are you today? Now, are you ready for our new chapter? Yes, today we will discover a new topic of SC015 Computer Science subject, which is the topic of 6.0 SDLC. So, what is SDLC? It's a short form of System Development Life Cycle. Let me warn you before we continue. So this topic was not related to any topic before. Why? Why? Because we will not discuss about the computer system, but rather we are going to explore more on the process of developing a system. We are not talking about hardware, we are not talking about software, or we are not talking about the technology of computer, but we will expose you to the step-by-step process that you have to follow as one of the individual involved in developing a system, or an individual who involved in developing an apps, maybe, or you might be involved as a person that in charge in developing a database system, right? Now, so these topics are related to the real life situation of management and teamwork in multimedia project of an organization or company. So you have to imagine that you are working in a multimedia company. You are asked to develop. You are asked to get involved in a project of multimedia. So this is the step that you have to involve. Now, okay, let's see what in the learning outcome that we have to achieve. Now, the learning outcome for today's lesson is to describe the steps of SDLC. Now, it's only one learning outcome, but believe me that you will having few difficulties in the first two lessons. But you have to make sure that you stay focused during this lesson. Through this lesson, you will explain all the steps involved, the purpose of each step, the person involved in the steps, and also the activities should be completed in every step. Or I might using the step. You can also use the words fasa, steps ke fasa sama sahaja. So kamu boleh guna dia. Kadang-kadang saya guna steps, kadang-kadang saya guna fasa. Before we continue with the phases of SDLC, we will begin with the introduction to SDLC. So for the first slide here, for the first two slides, the first part of my video, I will introduce you to SDLC first. I'm not going to talk about the 5 phases of SDLC. I'm going to introduce you the terms, the person involved, and what is the important part outside before you going through the 5 phases of SDLC. Now, what is SDLC itself? So SDLC is a conceptual model used in project management that describes the stages involved in an information system development project. From an initial feasibility study to maintenance of the completed application. SDLC can apply to technical and non-technical systems. In most use cases, a system is an IT technology such as hardware and software. Now, project and program managers typically take part in SDLC. So this is the cycle of SDLC. Why we call it as a cycle? Because there is no end of the process. You will have to go through every part and repeat the same process till the end. Right. Basically, there are 3 guidelines of SDLC before, even during the ongoing process of the development itself, which is involve the user, group each activities into phases, and then you have to make sure you define the standard. So what are these 3 guideline means? So user. Who is user? User is the person or individual or an organization that the system is being built. For example, if you are developing an educational software for kindergarten students, then your user might be the teacher, the kindergarten kids, the manager, and even the KPM. Who is KPM? Kementerian Pelajaran Malaysia. Right? So they are your user. So as a developer, you have to make sure that your idea is generated based on the expectation of the user. Let them, as a user, contribute to the design of the system. Number 2, group activities into phases. Now let me tell you that SDLC can be made up from multiple steps. There is no concrete set number of steps involved. Around 7 or 8, it might be at least 5, it might be as much as 12 steps. However, there can be anywhere from 5 outwards to 12. So group every activities into phases and plan it well. Plan it well before you start the process. Number 3, define standard. What is define standard? It is all about the rules or procedure. The rules or procedure. An organization or your client that you should follow. The standards are the rules, procedure that you have to follow, which related to your client. For example, if you are working with the schools, what are the standards of syllabus that you should focus on? And what is the standard of the syllabus that you should not be included in the system? Okay. So the standard you have to follow in this example is the syllabus. You don't want to create a software of educational software which might have the syllabus, the topic is out of the syllabus. Right. Now let's see, this is a few terms that you have to know before we get to the step of SDLC. What is project management? Now project management is actually a process of planning, scheduling, and controlling the activities during system development. There are goals to be achieved, which is to deliver an acceptable system to the user in agreed upon time frame, while also maintaining the cost. You want to make sure that you successfully deliver the system, and of course you will maintain the cost that you have planned. Now, there are few project management software that you can use. For example, Gantt chart and PERT chart. So this is a project management system that will assist you during the process of SDLC. Documentation. You will go through what is the documentation during the SDLC part nanti. Ada part yang involve certain documentation. Right? For what is documentation? Documentation is the collection and summarization of data and information. Documentation can be as simple as reports, diagrams, programs, or any other deliverable generated during system development. Apa-apa sahaja dalam bentuk report, diagram, or writing yang boleh digunakan sebagai satu dokumentasi atau disampaikan untuk melaporkan your progress, the progress of your system. Okay, so this is very important. How you gather the data. What is data gathering techniques? Apakah teknik-teknik untuk mengumpul data during your analysis and planning phases of SDLC? So there are 6 different techniques to gather data information. Number 1, review documentation. Observation. Survey, you can gather data through survey method. Interview, joint application design session, and also by researching. So we will go through every data gathering technique after this. Who participate in system development? Who participate in system development? In other words, who are the individuals? What is the roles of your project management team? So the first one is steering committee member. The system analyst. User, we have talked about user. Who is the user? User is basically your client, the manager of the project, vendor. And who is the vendor? We have also discussed about vendor before. The web developers, security specialists, application and system programmer. So this is the list of project team member. It will be differ for different project, but this is basically what we have for this syllabus. Okay, so this is the terms that you will go, you will find it during the lesson, during this video. So who is system analyst? System analyst is the person responsible for designing and developing an information system. Okay, so system analyst is the most important person in the project team. Responsible for the designing and developing. Orang kuat lah dikatakan ya. Now, who is steering committee? So steering committee is actually a group of people who involved in decision making. Right. So who is a project team? A group of people that consists of users, the system analysts, and other IT professionals. Now, project team is actually the person who involved in the developing the project itself. Steering committee is the person who involved in the planning, more to the vice president of the company, the client, ya, orang-orang yang besar lah, orang atasan. The project team ini lebih kepada the system analyst, the person who have the ability to develop the system, who have the background of the IT system. Now, feasibility study. What is feasibility study? Feasibility study is investigation to see the problem and decide whether it is practical and beneficial to build the system. Before you start with the process, before you start any project, you have to create or you have to start with a feasibility study. Why we need a feasibility study? Because we want to investigate. We have to decide whether the problem or the project is beneficial or practical to be built Okay, so kita perlu lihat dulu adakah projek yang kita nak buat itu bersesuaian, memberi keuntungan, sesuai dan praktikal untuk dibina. Jika tidak, so we have to reject the project. What is system proposal? System proposal is actually a document that assesses the feasibility of each alternative solution and then recommends the most feasible solution for a project. Now, when you are doing your feasibility study, how you deliver the report to either continue the project or reject the project. So you have to come up with the system proposal. The system proposal. So the system proposal is actually the document based on your feasibility study. Okay, contohnya, we have the project for jambatan from Labuan to the Menumbuk. For the purpose of development. Okay, to make sure that we have the communication, effective communication between Sabah and Labuan. Now, before we can start with the project itself, so you have there are few person that in charge in feasibility study. Okay, dia kata feasibility study. So based on the feasibility study, dia kata, I don't know whether you ada dengar berita ni. Kata so the jambatan from Labuan to Menumbuk itu is not tidak sesuai untuk dibina because of certain rejection from the Labuan people and also the Menumbuk people. That was the data that had been gathered from the feasibility study and was delivered during the, I think dalam berita dia ada cerita tu. So we don't know how they got the data, right? So that is the feasibility study. Now, what is prototype? Prototype is a working model of proposed system. So when you want to create a system, you have to make sure before you create the real system, you come up with the prototype. Okay, come up with the prototype, which is the working model. Kalau you nak bina sebuah rumah, sometimes you create the tiny house kan, supaya you nampak the layout of the house. Custom software is a software that performs functions specific to the company organization. It's developed based on user need. Okay, ini adalah berkaitan dengan if you are working on a software, you have to come up with a custom software. Okay, yang menerangkan the specific rules ataupun specific specification that you have to follow when you are using the software. Package software is a mass-produced, copyrighted, pre-written software available for purchase. Outsourcing. What is outsourcing? Outsourcing means a source outside the company develop software for the company. Means if you don't have the ability to build the system, then outsourcing the project to another company. Okay, you bagi projek itu kepada syarikat lain to build. So itu kita katakan outsourcing. Now, vendor, who is the vendor? Vendor is outside company that agree to develop software for the company or the organization. Ataupun kadang-kadang vendor itu adalah if you need some hardware to build your system, then vendor is the person that the organization or the company that give you all the hardware to complete the project. Okay. Now that is the first part of this video. We will continue more talking about the 5 phases of SDLC later on.